Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to give the floor to Professor Gianmario Verona.
Good morning to everyone and welcome to the yearly event of the Boroli Chair in European Studies in memory of Achille Boroli. Let me from the start wholeheartedly thank also on behalf of our President Mario Monti, that I realized is also been a Commissioner of Europe and also Prime Minister. Let me wholeheartedly thank on his behalf Paolo Gentiloni, President Paolo Gentiloni, that kindly accepted our invitation and came here to give, I'm understanding, his first talk at Bocconi. So to us, it's really a privilege and an honor to have him here. And we look forward to listening to his words on wisdom on a lectio entitled A New Economic Policy for the Next Generation. Let me also say that it's emotional to see so many people in this room. It is for Commissioner Paolo Gentiloni, and it is also because finally we can host events in a hybrid format. There are more than 1,000 people also connected online, so we say hello also to them, but also in presence. This is very positive because this means that we are close possibly to the end of this horrible pandemic, which, however, put Italy in some sense in a good position. And so it's also very important to understand how Europe sees Italy in this case and what we have to do in the next years in addition to finalize this extremely precious and important next generation EU plan, which is the plan of resilience and recovery in Italy. The event involves all of you, so all Bocconi students and professors, but also it's an event that involves Civica students. And President Gentiloni, Civica is one of the pilot European universities, as you know, funded under the Erasmus Plus program that was selected in 2019 by the European Commission. And together with our partners institution, we count more than 10,000 professors and 50,000 students. So this is a great initiative. And today also we will celebrate and award three groups of students that have recently undertaken an important course which we coordinated under the leadership of Professor Caselli and Professor Altomonte. Within the graduate school supervised by Dean Caru. Let me thank a number of people before leaving the floor. Let me, first of all, of course, thank the family Boroli that generously supported the creation of this chair in European Studies that is crucial for us to sustain research and teaching in policy and specifically in topics related to Europe. Let me specifically thank Andrea Boroli, Giuseppe Alemanni, Marcella Boroli, Stefania Boroli, and all the members present here of the Fondazione Achille and Giulia Boroli. Let me also thank Professor Ottaviani and Professor Altomonte that organized this event and are the shareholders of this important institution within Bocconi University, which is the Boroli Chair. And let me also thank Massimo Gaudina, Head of Representation of the European Commission in Northern Italy, and Maurizio Molinari, Head of Office at European Parliament Liaison Office in Milan. And so let me also thank all the people that will talk later on today. And again, I look forward to the lecture like all of you. And again, I thank very much Commissioner Paolo Gentiloni.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to give the floor to Mr. Andrea Boroli.
Buongiorno e benvenuti. Io farò il mio intervento in italiano.
Welcome and good morning. My speech will be in Italian because my English is quite poor. So I would like to thank Professor Mario Monti, Director Gianmario Verona for Bocconi University Hospitality for this initiative. that, as every year, hosts prominent European individuals meeting students and professors in memory of my father, Achille Boroli. I would like to thank the European Commissioner for Economy, Paolo Gentiloni, for accepting to be present at this event. In the past, we hosted other European commissioners, including Emma Bonino, the Prime Minister, Enrico Letta, and other commissioners, and of course, Mario Monti. I would like to thank Professor Busacca and his team for organizing this event. I would like to thank Civita and the relevant professors and students for working strenuously to study and to foster the European spirit. I would like to congratulate on the work they have carried out in the campus, which was supported by London School of Economics, the Central European University, and Stockholm School of Economics. The best 3 projects will be awarded the prize at the end of this session. I would like to thank Professor Caru and Professor Caselli and all the students of the Civica network who have, of course, welcomed enthusiastically and very seriously the project. I would also like to chair the European Study Chair, the Professor Ottaviani and Altomonte. In 1988, my father, Achille, a publisher, he was a liberal, Catholic, and Europeist, created a foundation in his name and in the name of his beloved wife with some own assets so that he could freely carry out his missions without being dependent on others, without relying on others. So he wanted to have this foundation with the philanthropic spirit that he has always had as a businessman, but also as a man. And so he wanted to continue doing what he had already done throughout his life, that is contributing to disseminating culture and knowledge as crucial tools for freedom and democracy. Long-sighted publisher with the De Agostini Geographical Institute, he was a synonym in Italy and also all around the world of important atlases and encyclopedias on any type of topic. He was a passionate liberal and he fostered brave initiatives to persuade famous journalists and scholars to protect society, school in particular, from maximalist and liberticidian ideologies. He was a European supporter and he considered Europe to be an asset to unite, defend and protect citizens. A political Europe where dreams and utopias are become history with strong institutions ensuring freedom, rights, stability and progress. He brought his ideas, values and principles and aims of the foundation, and he looked at youngsters. In particular, he focused on them. In Article 2 of the foundation, he claimed that school needed to be supported, and so he created some scholarships for students so that they could enroll in university. And so he also was at the head of the publication Homo Sapiens on the back then current affairs that were freely distributed in high schools to promote free spirit of reflection and thinking. And this was welcomed positively, and the foundation started collaborating with Bocconi University, something that started in 2006 with some lectures and some important days dedicated to Europe. And also in 2018, the European Study Chair was created in the name of the Achille and Giulia Boroli Foundation. The chair has immediately interpreted the wishes of my father in terms of academic courses, but also in terms of initiatives that are carried out with a very important role in telling about Europe, even though it is not perfect and it should be renewed for certain aspects, but it must represent everybody in a society that can ensure our rights and our freedoms. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to give the floor to Professor Carlo Altomonte.
Good morning, and welcome to all the students of our courses, graduate and undergraduate, connected to the Boroli Chair in European Affairs, where I have the pleasure to work together with Gianmarco Ottaviano. And let me also welcome all the students of the multi-campus course on the future of Europe, a new experience that we have started this year. They are now connected live through our partner universities of the Civica Network in Europe, today represented by one of its key founding members, Stefano Caselli, which will be on stage with us later on today. As you know, this is an actual lecture of our course of European Economic Policy, to whom many of you belong. So as the course director, it should be my duty to introduce you Commissioner Gentiloni, our keynote today. It should be my duty to tell you how pleased and honored I am to have as a guest speaker the current EU Commissioner for Economy, former Prime Minister of Italy, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Communication, Member of Parliament, and many other achievements. And also, as Rector Verona has already said, I'm particularly pleased as this is the first time he will be here as an official speaker. That should be the plan, but actually looking at this room today, I have some other thoughts in mind for my short introduction. I would like to remark how 1 year ago, this magnificent plenary room would have been silent, as it is now, but not because you would be paying attention to my words, but because 1 year ago, this room would have been totally empty. And the same would have been 2 years ago, had this event been taken place in a few weeks' time. And yet, today, we are here at the start of the semester, hosting in presence a prominent European policymaker in a room where hundreds of students are attending in all safety, and with thousands of other students connected online in Milan, Paris, London, Stockholm, Berlin, Vienna, through our Civica network, and the rest of Europe. And the EU Commissioner is about to explain us how Europe has managed to overcome the economic shock of the pandemic, and now is looking forward to the challenges ahead for the next generation with a strengthened sense of cohesion. I think we should stop for a second our thoughts and consider this, and realize that all I've just said is not granted. It's not granted overcoming one of the largest economic crises in history, exploiting and making the most of new breakthrough technologies for vaccines, producing and delivering them in billions throughout the world in less than 2 years, while maintaining in place at the same time democratic institutions and social order, at least on this side of the Atlantic. No, this is definitely not granted. It's a major success, and we have to be fully aware of that. Clearly, that doesn't mean we can ignore the enormous social and economic challenges that the pandemic has left in our countries, the need to fight new and emerging inequalities, the inevitable geopolitical tensions that we now are experiencing in Ukraine, while at the same time facing the digital and the climate transition. And of course, we will not ignore them, starting from the analysis, discussions, battle of ideas, proposal that emerge in places like this universities among our students and colleagues and in debates with policymakers. Of course, we will debate them, but the key point is the fact that we are able to tackle these challenges starting from the solid footing of an institutional framework that has hold in place, and that we have been able to maintain and possibly strengthen throughout this pandemic. I think this is already 50% of the solution of our problem. The fact that the system has hold in place and we can celebrate a success story in fighting the pandemic, and the fact that we are here in this room full of students debating policy issues for Europe is testimony to that. So it's this with this positive awareness that I really have the pleasure to welcome this lecture, and I invite Commissioner Paolo Gentiloni to come on the podium and meet the next generation of Europeans. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to give the floor to Mr. Paolo Gentiloni.
Grazie. Good morning. Magnifico Rettore, Vicepresidente Boroli, grazie a lei.
Vice President Boroli, thank you, to your family, to the Foundation, dear President Monti, Professor Altomonte, dear students.
We always say great pleasure to be with you, but really today it's great pleasure for me to be alla Bocconi and to address to this crowded Aula Magna. We are not, it's not frequent to have such opportunities in these times, so it's really a great one for me. And also to address to several students connected online. I'll try to make some remarks on the state of play of the European economy, and then I'll be very glad to answer to your questions and to try to go in depth in some issue, if possible. The European economy today is at a crossroads, because indeed, within a year from the deepest recession since the war, the EU's GDP has returned to its pre-crisis levels. Unemployment in the euro area has actually decreased and is now at the lowest level since the introduction of the single currency. And this is a testament to the strength of our collective response to the crisis. And I think we should be proud of this as European institutions and European governments and European citizens, because this was also the result of a community reaction to the pandemic. However, our economy is also facing a number of challenges, both new and old, from the evolution of the pandemic to more persistent energy prices rises and inflation, and of course, growing geopolitical tensions. So nothing is certain in the situation we are addressing. Not all member states have closed the gap with the pre-pandemic level of growth, and youth unemployment, especially in some countries, remain much too high. During the pandemic, Europe has taken bold, unprecedented decisions, launching a new recovery plan, the very same name of the Marshall Plan. You remember it was the European Recovery Program after the World War. But this plan was a European one. Adopting more ambitious climate targets, the more ambitious in the world, and leading an international agreement on taxation. Yet all of these decisions need to be fully implemented to become a reality. And it will not be an easy way. And this crisis has also raised a number of broader questions around the adequacy of our growth model, the role of the state in the economy, and Europe's strategic autonomy in the world. So the decisions we take in the coming months will determine which way Europe will go. If it turns back to the pre-pandemic days of low growth, social disparities, and environmental fragility, or if we can forge a new road, a post-pandemic future of durable, sustainable, and fair growth. I believe we can. And I believe we will choose the second option. And let me explain how by focusing on three main topics: our recovery program, Next Generation EU, our proposal in the area of taxation, and the review of our fiscal and economic governance and rules. Next generation EU. Well, the recovery program, it certainly stands out as the most important initiative of the EU's response to the crisis. This initiative was labeled in various ways in Europe, in Brussels. Just to mention some of them, I remember the German Chancellor, at the time Finance Minister, who referred to a Hamiltonian moment for Europe. You know Hamilton, the first Treasury Secretary in US. Well, he died in a duel, but anyway, it was a very important step for the United States. Someone referred to a Copernican moment, a Rubiconian moment. Well, anyway, I think it will be remembered as a watershed moment in the history of European integration, but very much will depend on its implementation, on what we are doing now. It is, in fact, much more than a recovery program. It is a plan to repair and prepare for the next generation, for you. It is an 800 billion euro package to relaunch and transform our economies, to make them greener, more digital, and more inclusive. Each country prepared its own national plan that combines investments and reforms to achieve these common objectives. Member States' plans allocate almost 70% of the resources to what we call the twin transition, so the green and the digital spending, from sustainable transport and clean energy to 5G rollout and digitalization. Of the remaining funds, almost 30% are allocated for social spending, such as on education, healthcare, and labor market reforms. So greener, digital, inclusive. These are all crucial areas to bolster the long-term growth, competitiveness, and resilience of our economy. The rollout of these plans has already started across most member states. Our priority in the months and years ahead will be to make sure they are implemented effectively and that the money is well spent. Next Generation EU is also innovative for the way in which it is funded. Maybe this is the real breakthrough. For the first time, the Commission is issuing common European bonds, raising these funds on the financial markets and transferring them to member states. And resources are allocated with, among others, the target to manage and, if possible, reduce divergence among member states. So it's not an equal distribution on per capita basis. It is a distribution with a scope, and the scope is to try to avoid the increase of divergence among different member states in front and after this crisis. This is both an extraordinary show of European solidarity, and I think too frequently we consider solidarity as a given or as a little bit abstract theme. Here, solidarity was very important in making this decision possible, because after terrible initial weeks during this crisis, weeks when I remember very well, we were in Brussels committed in avoiding ban of medical equipment from one European country to another European country. It was a terrible beginning of this crisis, also for Europe, and we all remember this, especially we in northern Italy. But then solidarity was crucial to make possible such an extraordinary decision, an achievement that before the pandemic, this issuing of common bonds, no one thought possible. And it is possible, and it is a success story, because these issuances are quite successful in financial markets. They are normally largely oversubscribed, 13, 17 times oversubscribed, and most of these bonds are green bonds, so that the European Commission now is one of the most important issuer of green bonds in the world. So when you look at it in its entirety, what we have with Next Generation EU, it's a European recovery plan to support European priorities, financed by common issuance and repaid using new own resources. It is, in essence, for the duration of its lifetime, of course, a European fiscal capacity, one of the key missing pillars of our economic and monetary union. We all know that Next Generation EU is a temporary initiative set to last until 2026. But if we make a success of it, we will not only have lifted the European economy's growth prospects and created millions of jobs, we will have created a blueprint for similar initiatives in the future, and for this method to be used in the future for other strategic missions of the Union. This is why Next Generation EU is an opportunity we simply cannot miss. We owe it to the future generation and to the future of Europe. And this challenge is particularly crucial for my country, for Italy, for the large amount of grants and loans allocated to Italy. I could say that the success of the Italian plan will be the success, largely, the success of Next Generation EU. So this is a unique opportunity for Italy, but also a huge European responsibility for this country. Well, let me now address to a second key topic that I wanted to touch upon, which is taxation. This, as you know, is a competence that member states have traditionally guarded closely. But it has more recently emerged as an area where our citizens are clearly expecting action and answers that only Europe, acting as a bloc and in the common interest, can provide. Large multinationals, and in particular the tech giants, have emerged as the clear winners of this crisis, of the pandemic. These companies have benefited from the digital shift accelerated by the pandemic, but also from years of a race to the bottom to very, very low level of tax rates in the countries where they were headquartered, even when those profits were realized in different countries, in other jurisdictions. The recession caused by the pandemic, with public finances under strain and ordinary businesses and households struggling, has made the need to address this situation all the more urgent. Rising inequalities and race to the bottom on multinational taxation cannot coexist any longer. Last year, 137 countries reached an historic agreement on the reform of international corporate taxation. An agreement, as you know, based on two pillars. One, setting a minimum level of taxation at 15% of effective taxation for the multinational over 750 million of turnover, and the other foreseeing the reallocation of part of the profits of multinational giants, I mean over 20 billion of turnover, to where they are made, and not only to where these multinational have decided to establish their own headquarters. This is nothing less than a tax revolution. It could appear not something like this because, well, 15% of effective corporate taxation in many of our European countries appear not to be so high. But we all know what the situation is for tax havens, for what we call diplomatically in the EU aggressive tax planning, meaning that there are countries that are using taxation to have competition with other European countries to attract business. But the consequences of all this has been, for years and years, the lowering of the level of effective taxation. This is why it is a revolution, reaffirming two important principles. First, that companies must pay their fair share, and second, that they should do so where profits are made, and not just where they decide to establish their headquarters. A spirit of compromise and common interest in Europe and worldwide enabled us to get there. We must now translate this into the EU law, not only the EU law, because there is a big challenge also in US, for example, and this will be our priority in the coming months. And taxation has a key role to play, not only to ensure that our recovery is fair, but also to ensure that our recovery is green. And this is the case for to put a price on CO2 emissions. One of the most important and innovative proposals in this regard is the introduction of a carbon border adjustment mechanism, a European proposal. With this measure, we are essentially putting a price on the carbon footprint of certain products coming into the EU. Goods will not be taxed depending on the country of origin, but depending on their carbon content. This is not a protectionist measure. It is what we are asking to our internal businesses. These goods will pay the same price as our European industry is asked to do. We are targeting CO2 emissions, not countries. The CBAM, sorry for the acronyms, but you know that in Brussels the acronyms are never taking a pause, so we have new acronyms running every day. But CBAM is now a consolidated one. Is a green measure that has two goals. Avoid that companies in the EU delocalize to countries with weaker environmental standards, and encourage other countries to pursue more ambitious climate policies. This is another example of how Europe can lead the way on climate with new and innovative proposals. There is a lot of discussion about this leading role of the European Union on the climate transition. And of course, having a leading role should not be to be isolated from the rest of the global players. But at the same time, we have very clearly a lot of advantages in being early movers in this transition. And these advantages are not only for our population, for our citizens, but are advantages for our economy. So of course, we need a balance, but the fact that we are in a leading position at a global level should not be seen as a risk. It should be seen as a great opportunity. My third item is maybe the more complicated one, what we call the Fiscal Rules, Economic Governance Review. The basis is very clear. Our ambition for strong, sustainable, and inclusive growth in Europe needs to be matched by new fiscal rules. Rules that are fit for the times and the challenges we are facing. The first concerns in this discussion, the first concern is the enormously increased investment needs that we have. Only for the green transition, we have estimated 540 billion per year until 2030 in additional private and public investments. 540 billion per year only for the green transition. So our fiscal rules need to be changed to reflect this new reality and enable this kind of growth-enhancing investments. We are also re-emerging from the pandemic with much higher debt levels. And this is another new reality that our fiscal rules must account for. You know that we have our rules about the debt. We have thresholds, the 60% threshold that was established among countries at a time when 60% was the average debt among these 12 countries, and at a time when interest rates were between 4 and 5%. Now we are in quite different times. But of course, we have to face the issues of high debt levels, and we have to try to show that reducing high debt in a growth-friendly manner is not an oxymoron. It is possible. It is doable. A compromise, a consensus is possible to reach. Because we have seen the effects of too soon tightening with austerity measures in the previous crisis. How these decisions taken in the aftermath of the last crisis can have very negative effects. So I believe the rules should be reformed to make sure that high debt levels are brought down, which is needed, in a more gradual and realistic way, without choking growth. Indeed, it is clear by now that growth is the best way to maintain debt sustainability, so it must remain front and center of any review of our rules. We had a public consultation on this. It ran until the end of last year, and we received a very large number of contributions from all levels of societies, from governments, central banks, international organizations, businesses, think tanks, universities, and civil society organizations. The proposals are also very wide-ranging from questioning the Maastricht targets to calling for a permanent central fiscal capacity for the Eurozone, which was proposed in their contributions by the ECB, IMF, and the OECD. In a way, this is a debate that is as old as the euro itself, as Professor Mario Monti knows much better than anyone in this room. But the confluence of a number of factors have created a positive, possibly positive, momentum for change. The realization of both the very large investments needed to achieve our common goals and the high debt levels all governments face. The growing consensus around the need for a new growth model and a stronger role for the state in some sectors of the economy. The broader question of strengthening Europe's strategic autonomy, also through more effective fiscal rules. A Europe capable to fund common strategic missions in the future, if we want to be the player we need to be in the new geopolitical arena that we have. A French European politician, Pascal Lamy, described the situation as the post-pandemic situation as a situation of a transition from a world of herbivores to a world of carnivores. Well, I don't know. I don't know if this is a pessimistic assessment, but for sure we need a stronger autonomy of the European Union for the coming years. And this stronger autonomy that we call, as you know, open strategic autonomy. And these three words are describing very well the discussion that is ongoing to define this autonomy. But this autonomy should be funded. So we have to fund our common mission in the near future. This debate will enter in its decisive phase in the coming months. In March, the EU leaders will hold a special summit in Paris, focusing also on a new growth model for Europe. And we, the Commission, then will draw our conclusions on the review of the rules in late spring. The Commission will work hard to build consensus and avoid the revival of the same old divide among European member states. It is not an easy task, but I think we have a chance. Ladies and gentlemen, dear professors, dear students, it is often said that Europe lacks a European demos. Initiatives like Civica and the establishment of a European University for Social Sciences show that younger generations are frequently aware of both their national and their European identity. You see current events in other European countries as matters that directly concern you, and you are keen to take action to address the big challenges Europe is facing. I think it's no coincidence that this first multi-campus course on the future of Europe was launched in the midst of the pandemic. It is also a reaction to the terrible crisis that we had to face as Europeans. The pandemic has rekindled a sense of belonging, of community. It reminded us that we are stronger together. We Europeans, as citizens, as individuals, are free. We are very proud of the fact that as individuals and citizens, we are free. But we are not alone. not alone in difficulties, because our social model showed also in this terrible crisis that it created conditions to work together, to be stronger together. In his last address to the European Council in December, the late President of the Parliament, David Sassoli, said, "What Europe needs, and needs most of all, is a new project of hope." We have prepared the ground to put Europe's economy on a stronger and more sustainable footing, to make it more resilient against future crises, to provide the next generation with better prospects. But the task of building that new project of hope will fall to you. This is why the Commission also has made 2022 the European Year of Youth. I've always been convinced, and my experience in this crisis has convinced me even further, that many things seem impossible until they are done. From Next Generation EU to a global deal on taxation, from binding climate targets to the reopening of our fiscal rules, all these things seemed perennially out of reach. It is a reminder that red lines are there to be crossed, and you should not set limits to your imagination. And let this be my closing message to you, and ready for your questions. Thank you.
Okay. So, Commissioner Gentiloni has kindly accepted to have an open debate with the students. We have here, and I thank him for the wealth of the messages of hope that you have been able to deliver, both in economic and in political terms. We have here students from the International Economics and Management course, but also students from our International Politics and Government classes, and I thank Catherine De Vries and Italo Colantone for having collaborated with us in this event. So the floor is yours. If you want to raise your hand, and there will be a microphone. If we keep, we can start in the first row here, there. Yeah, and then we move all the way. Okay. Keep the question short, please. Paolo, we might have 3 of them together, and then you answer, and then we have a second set. Okay, that's great. Please.
Okay, good morning. My name is Hannah. I'm Vice President of European Generation. So also you can see that we're very much rooted in Bocconi as young Europeans. Thank you for your address. You referenced the Marshall Plan in your address. And looking at those early moments of European integration, we can see that the process since has been not linear, and that, yes, it was driven by ideology and a sense of belonging, but also by the political and economic crises of the day. So in your opinion, what is the main way in which the COVID-19 pandemic will be affecting the future of European integration? Thank you.
Thank you. We have another one here in the first row. And then I see a colleague over there. You can go as a third, Massimo.
Good morning. Thank you for your address and for addressing some such important and crucial points. I'm a law student, so my question will be less economical. Please forgive me. Does the Commission have the instruments, both political and legal instruments, to achieve in the next few months such important goals? You mentioned the social revolution, the tax revolution, or do we need other legal and political instruments to do so, in order also to overcome, as you mentioned in your very last remarks, the maybe missing consensus from other member states? Thank you.
Thank you. We can have a third question. There is maybe we pick a colleague, if you don't mind, and then we have another round.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioner Gentiloni. As you said, we are at the beginning of the process of redefining the rules for the Eurozone. And as you hinted, we seem to have a twin problem. On one side, how to keep fiscal spaces as large as needed for investment. And on the other side, how to finance them, both preserving financial stability and avoiding possibly mutualization. For instance, through a European debt agency issuing common bonds. With a further concern, how to build common consensus? So, my question, how do you see a common proposal that also Germany and other core countries can see as win-win? Do you think that a non-mutualizing European debt agency could be a solution? Thank you.
Thank you, Massimo. We can maybe answer these three questions, Paolo, and then we move to...
Yes.
Let's stay here a couple of hours.
Because more than three, it's... no, well, how the crisis will affect the EU integration. Well, on the positive, I think we have for sure a big chance of increasing EU integration in all the health sector that, of course, I didn't mention in my words, but you know that de facto the European institutions have no big competencies on health. But in reality, during this crisis, the European Commission took some decisions extremely important. Two of them are very well known. First, the common procurement of vaccines. And just think what could have happened without a common procurement of vaccines. We have fought, we would have had a fight between neighbors, among neighbors for vaccines, and a lot of good business for fake vaccines and frauds. So the biggest producer of vaccine, the biggest exporter of vaccine, the biggest donor of vaccine, not sufficiently, of course, the donors' quote, is the European Union, thanks to the decision of member states to give to the Commission the role of this common procurement. And the second point is what we have all in our pocket. I have a Belgian one, which is very valuable. We call it here in Italy, Green Pass, in other countries, different names. But this QR code that was made in Brussels and is now used by, I think, 600 million people, more or less, recognized by 59 jurisdictions, so much broader than the 27 EU member states, is another success story. So can we build on this? We should. I think this is one of the lessons. The second one, I'll not go again, is all the chance that we have for integration in economy. And this is where my remarks were going. And also the third question is also going. Of course, this is not granted. The good step forward made by the European Union were also, I refer to the importance of solidarity, quite obvious word, but very important in this crisis. But the strength of the European message was also because of an agenda of this pandemic that was not the real good agenda for anti-EU positions. if at the center of the agenda you have healthcare, jobs, economy, the need of multilateral cooperation, the need of cooperation among countries, it's quite difficult to have an anti-EU agenda. But we also know that this is an open issue, that we have to build on this, to strengthen this, but the European model was such a strong demonstration in these couple of years. But at the same time, also inside the European Union, we know that this model is not completely shared. And this mix of liberty and welfare state, social services, which is our strength in the world, is not completely achieved even within the European Union. So we can build on success, but this is never granted. The legal constraints are, of course, one of the problems. We need unanimity for plenty of things. Politics is essential in Brussels and among European member states to work, to build consensus, and this is how we should work there. But this work is quite difficult if the threshold is unanimity. So let's hope that also from this conference on the future of Europe, some message will come on this domain. We are not wanting to harmonize everything, to cancel member states' autonomy, not at all. But I hope that diplomacy will work. I'm sure that a de-escalation is possible, but just think to the situation we are living in the border of Ukraine and of the discussion that we will have if we will have to take a decision on sanctions. I'm quite sure that we did an excellent job in the Commission to prepare, hoping not to have to use them, but then we will need unanimity. And this is not... So the legal constraint is there. We should try to change things. And crises are, as always, a good driver to try to change. A debt agency, well, I think first we are not yet ready to put any proposal on the table, and in such a delicate issue, it would be, from my side, not realistic to give impressions before coming with proposal on the table. At the same time, I think that some common awareness is there. This is what makes me rather optimistic. But the common awareness is not on the need of a debt agency, honestly, not at the time. But the common awareness is on the need of extraordinary effort for our investments. Nobody in the club dare to say that a country with limited fiscal space will not address the climate transition. Nobody. Everybody is aware of the fact that we all have to address the climate transition. Everybody knows how much of missions we have to strengthen our autonomy and competitiveness. Today, and I'm guilty, not attending the college this morning because they changed the day of the college. It was supposed to be on Wednesday, and it is now, in this very moment. We are deciding something that we call CHIPS Act, which is quite important. It's industrial policy, which is not obvious in the European Union. Member states supporting with billions of money the possibility for the European economy to have more strength in semiconductors. I think we have the awareness of the need to make step forward. And the discussion should not be the same discussion among the frugal of the North and the big spenders of the South. Something that the pandemic showed is that we are all with the same problem, and the climate transition is confirming that we are all with the same problem, and the need of a strategic autonomy is confirming that we have all to address common problems. It will be difficult, but it is possible.
Thank you. I think we have another round of questions for sure. There are one over there since a while, your long arm, and then there are a couple in the front row, then probably one over there. Either can take four. Okay.
So, thank you so much. Mr. President, you've been an insider and an expert on policy making on both the national and the European level. Therefore, I would like to ask you about the gap that there is in implementation of many of those brilliant policies that are created in Brussels. Let me give you an example of the ETS scheme, which was created very rightly by the Commission to fight climate change and to use the financial markets to address that problem. But now that the prices of gas, of electricity skyrocketed, national politicians who are eventually accountable before their electorate, they simply subsidize energy, or they do different tax policies. So effectively, they simply counteract the great work that the Commission does. And this whole situation is also exploited by Eurosceptics, by populists in national politics. So from your perspective, having worked both in Brussels and in Rome, how do you think that European leaders can address that gap? Thank you.
Thank you. There is a question behind, and then a few over in front. Yes, I mean. And then there are a few already raised in front if you want to move here.
So you talked about a green transition, and you talked about tracking the prices of goods based on their carbon footprint. Well, on average, as also the other student talked about, businesses in Italy are currently spending between 150% and 400% more for gas and electricity use. Do you think that Europe is going in the right direction as far as relations with Russia are concerned? And how do you think that the European Union can solve the energy crisis by still being sensible about pollution? Do you think that nuclear energy can be a solution?
Straight and to the point, I like that. The lady here in front, yeah, right behind President Monti. Yeah. This one, or... Oh, you got, sorry, you go. Go ahead, yeah.
As other people mentioned before, I'm a politics student, so I'm going to ask a question from a political perspective. And since you worked over different issues in different times, in different positions as Prime Minister in Rome and as Commissioner in Brussels, I wanted to ask, what difference did you see, if any, in your relationship with the bureaucracy in Brussels as Commissioner and in Rome as Prime Minister? Thank you.
It's a good question. Huh? Let's go with these three. Yeah.
Yes. Well, reactions to energy prices, gas prices, Well, a reaction is fully justified first. Why? Because we had an increase in gas prices in Europe. If you make 100 of the gas price in 1st January of 2020, in 1st of January in 2022, the gas price is 700. So 7 times in 2 years. This is not the case for US, for example. In the same period, the gas prices in US doubled. In Europe, 7 times higher. So a reaction is needed. The Commission discussed with member states what kind of reactions. We are still discussing on several work streams how to strengthen the supply of LNG, how to try to have common procurement, not easy. Gas is not like vaccines, but there is a work stream on this. How to better manage stockpiling. And then the big discussion is on the functioning of the electricity market and the role of gas in the electricity market that some member states are discussing and asking to change, and the discussion is ongoing. But for the reaction of member states, because you are right, this reaction could undermine our climate transition, what we ask is that these reactions are temporary and targeted. This means that they are not there forever, and they are not there for everyone. They are targeted for more vulnerable households, they are temporary, and from this point of view, they are fully justified. Is the solution in nuclear energy? I wouldn't say so, honestly. The discussion that we have, very long and complicated discussion, which was about something that we call green taxonomy, but maybe it's too long now to address, was about the possibility or not to include gas and nuclear in a taxonomy for investors. There are a lot of investors looking for purpose and for green purpose in their investments in financial markets. Should we give them in their purpose also gas and nuclear, and what kind of conditions? We discussed a lot on conditions. At the end, there are some constraints on disclosure for investors. So if you want green bonds for some projects, you will know if there is part of this project with gas or nuclear content. But one thing is clear, that countries that are using more or less gas or nuclear in their energy mix today will not cancel the role of nuclear energy or gas today. We will have an enormous need of electricity in the coming couple of decades, and we will gradually address to these needs with renewables, with hydrogen, with all renewables. In the transition, countries that have in their energy mix gas should make gas less CO2 polluting. Countries that have nuclear should keep their nuclear and try to address the issue of waste, which is very complicated. But I don't think that this is the solution, because I don't think that you can build nuclear plants all over Europe. Many countries decided not to use nuclear plants. So in some of these countries, gas is an alternative, because, you know, the risk otherwise is that, just to make an example, you have a country, a big one, closing nuclear plants. Okay. They have good level of renewables, but not sufficient. How do they substitute electricity coming from nuclear with lignite? Is this good for the environment? Not perfect, honestly. So I think that I'm proud of the decision taken in some countries, including Italy, many, many years ago. And I was one also of the promoter of this, don't say this too much, around to leave nuclear apart for the risks, for the costs, etc. Maybe in the future we will have different nuclear plants, who knows? But these are sources for the transition, not for the steady state we are working for at the moment. Bureaucracy. Well, I don't think the main difference is on bureaucracy. Of course, in Brussels, we have a very qualified, I have to say, and strong, multinational, frequently young bureaucracy. So, a good one. In Italy, we have very good and strong bureaucracies in some areas, weaker in other areas. I had several experience from my own city, Rome, to the Prime Minister office. And I know that we have differences. Good bureaucracy, but not everywhere. The real difference is on accountability, on the relation of politicians with public opinion, newspapers, NGO. This is obvious at national level. We have still to build something like this at European level. We don't have European media. We have a lot of media in Europe, but not European media. So the risk is that what we call the bubble in Brussels is the good is that you are addressing the problems of the future. You can discuss for hours of artificial intelligence. And I can't imagine a meeting of an Italian government discussing for hours of artificial intelligence. And this is the good part of the story. The good part is that you are not always running after silly things, as it can happen in national situations. But the bad thing is that you are not really accountable towards a parliament, because the European Parliament is very important, but not completely in charge of the executive branch, which is the Commission, etc., etc., etc. So in the step forward that we have to do, don't touch the bureaucracy, which is very good, in my view, in Brussels, but try to implement democracy.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I think we have to stop here because we have to go on with the ceremony of the awards because of time constraints. But Commissioner Gentiloni will not rush away immediately, so we'll stay here for a few minutes. So if anyone else would like to have a chat with him at the end of the event, it is possible to do so. So let me invite then Antonella on stage to start the ceremony of award of the Boroli Multicampus Course Awards, and then I will ask Stefano to come here and award those who won.
Thank you, Carlo. Good morning, everyone. I'm really glad to be here and to introduce to you the Boroli Award of the Civica Capstone Project competition. The project is part of the European Multi-Campus course that is one of the flagship initiatives of Civica. Civica is an amazing and very important project. It was selected in 2019 by the European Commission and funded under the Erasmus Plus program. Its key ambition is to serve European societies and to educate the next generations of Europeans by providing the knowledge and tools paramount to understand and influence an increasingly complex world. Within this framework, 13 professors from 6 partner universities of Civica have jointly designed and taught the Europeanship Multi-Campus course. It was launched, as already said, in 2021-2022, focusing on the policymaking areas that will be the great challenges for European Union in the coming years. Well, this course has included many different activities and a series of online live lectures delivered synchronously across Civica campuses, and we have the chance to participate in one of these lessons, combined with the local activities. Students had the chance also to participate in the Capstone project and to identify and analyze the main economic, political, and societal challenges posed by globalization, climate change, and digital transition. And they had the task to assess the evolution of the political system within the European Union in response to these challenges. Well, the students' participation was impressive. Over 130 students have worked in transnational teams under the supervision of 12 researchers and instructors representing 7 Civica partners. On 28 groups completing the Capstone project within the course, 13 have qualified for the Boroli Award by achieving outstanding evaluation from their respective supervisors. And among the 13 finalists, 3 winning projects, I forgot to leave the mask. 3 winning projects have been selected by a committee of professors coordinated by the Achille and Giulia Boroli Chair in European Studies in close cooperation with the Boroli Foundation. And now I invite Professor Caselli on stage to proclaim the winners.
Thank you very much, Antonella. It's a great honor to be here to announce the winners of the Boroli Award within the multi-campus course with the huge effort of the Capstone project led by Professor Altomonte. I'm very happy because it's really a concrete outcome of our collective engagement within Civica, so I'm very happy to see the outcome of such bright students. I'm very glad to announce the 3 winners, so there are 3 different teams. The first one is the team number 2. The reason is because the team tackled the digitalization challenge, and the project work was titled Promoting Use Data Privacy Norms to the USA Diversifying Interlocutors. And so a big applause and congratulations to the team members. And Wojtek Balon, Marjolaine Jacques, Rune E, Arnacciani Riaseta, Arash Sabezvari, and Lukács Willer. and we have on stage Arash Shabedzari. This way. Congratulations. Non si preoccupi, questo è per lei. The other two teams, the team number 6, very impressive work on the globalization challenge, and the title of the project is Should EU Develop a Common Migration Policy? And congratulations to the team members Bianca Brunori, Paulina Matt, Kevin McGuinness, and Andrea Schmidt. A big applause to them. And the last one, the team 25, focusing on environmental challenge, with the title of the project, European Carbon Pricing, a Pathway to Net Zero by 2050. And congratulations to the team members, David Diego Chao, Mara Guillain, Adam Nowakowski, and Lisa Praman. A big applause to all the students. And congratulations to all the participants. You are very bright, absolutely.
Congratulations to all of you. Some of the topics and some of the work groups are really very interesting policy proposals, actually. Impressive, some of them. So some of the students are contributing to the Conference for the Future of Europe. So probably we will hear some of those proposals circulated around. Now it's time to conclude. Let me invite on stage my good dear friend and colleague Gianmarco Ottaviano, the chairholder of the Boroli Chair in European Studies. Gianmarco, for the final remarks.
So thank you, Carlo. Thank everybody. To conclude, I want to join those who have spoken before me in thanking all the participants to this amazing Europe Day, which has restarted on a high note and in person our annual events in memory of Achille Boroli, devoted to the discussion of topical European issues. It was not obvious to organize such an event in these troubled times. This is why, on behalf of the Boroli Chair community, I wish to thank all the Bocconi staff who have made this event possible. In particular, the staff at communication, events and ceremonies, development and alumni engagement, and fundraising. I want to conclude this Europe Day with a medley of quotes from eminent Europeans of the past, leaving it to the Europeans of the future, our students in particular, to figure out who those eminent Europeans are. I would only mention that they are great women and great men, but mostly great women. The quotes are on the challenges and the opportunities on living in the period we live in, a period of crisis, of economic, social, and political crisis. So, crisis. I start with these quotes. I've always thought that Europe would be made in crisis, and it would be the sum of the solutions that we would bring to this crisis. The crisis consists precisely in the fact that the old is dying and the new cannot be born. In this interlude, a great variety of morbid symptoms appear. Never forget that all it takes is a crisis for our rights to be called into question. These rights are never acquired. You will have to remain vigilant throughout your life. Yet, I'm not one of those who fear the future. The young generations sometimes surprise us in that they differ from us. But the young generations are courageous, capable of enthusiasm and sacrifices like the others. Let's learn to trust them to preserve life's supreme value. And from the young, we should learn to pay less attention to what has been done than to what remains to be done. Long live Europe, viva l'Europa.
Thank you, Gianmarco. Thanks to all of you. It has been a wonderful morning. Thanks to Paolo Gentiloni for his super kind availability, notwithstanding the college today. And see you next year for another event. Thank you.